Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the August 28th, 2018 Mayor and Council work session. I want to apologize for our late start. We had a meeting prior to this that ran over a little bit. I'd like to start off with a pledge of allegiance. That's the veteran in me. So I'd ask everyone to stand. I'm going to ask Councilman Smith to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So there's no printed agenda for this evening because I think there's just one topic that we're discussing this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to the town manager to start us off, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. As everyone knows, I think for the reason for being here, the town of Smithsburg, along with the county commissioners and county staff members, have had various discussions regarding the proposed upgrades to the Smithsburg wastewater treatment plant. The town has had serious concerns with the county's proposed modification to the full upgrade of the plant's capacity from 330,000 gallons to 660,000 gallons per day, as budgeted in the county CIP for years, and has said still to be in the CIP for 2020 and 2021, to now implementing an intermediate upgrade involving a modification to the biomag system that includes aeration that may increase the plant's current capacity from 330,000 up to 450,000 gallons per day. As a matter of notation, the average daily flow of the Smithsburg plant from August 1 through the 20th has been 396,000 gallons per day, substantially higher than the rated capacity of the plant. While we know that this was due to the heavy rains, it also shows how easily the plant's capacity can be exceeded, given that the plant is utilized at a high rate. The county briefing report, as I noted for today's agenda, the county commissioner stipulated that the town's previous growth records and need for sewer capacity dictates in part the reasoning for performing the intermediate upgrade in lieu of needing a full upgrade. This leaves many questions and concerns from the town of Smithsburg to the county, which include, number one, the county reports continue to state that the town's capacity needs are predicated only on the development of Cloverly, which will need approximately 250 EDUs. While the annexation and development of Cloverly will assume a great portion of the capacity, other potential development is pending. One of those is Mountain Shadows here in Smithsburg at 52 lots. I was also approached yesterday by Rodner Family LLC, who is anticipating developing a 150-acre or 105-acre parcel, which will also require development of that plant's capacity. One of the first things prospective developers look at is the availability of utilities, as we all know. If we cannot provide that capacity, we will not have growth here in Smithsburg, period. The Smithsburg interim upgrade may provide capacity for the immediate annexation project, but it will not accommodate long-term or unexpected growth in the town, or failing septics in the county, as well as having to account for the I&I, as I previously noted. The proposed intermediate upgrade to the biomag system will take up to 18 months for design and permitting, which will place it at the timeline of the delayed full upgrade project. Once the discharge permit is opened up for interim modification, newer changing policies at the state level may preclude further upgrades. Given the guarantees in the full upgrade compared to the fiscal impact of the intermediate upgrade, the costs and the risks do not provide the assurances that the town needs in order to accommodate the planned future growth of Smithsburg. With that, I think that's the immediate concerns that the town has, but I'm sure that each of the elected officials here has other issues that they'd like to address before we open the floor to the county officials. With that, Mayor, I'm not sure if you'd like to pass it along.
My biggest concern with what I've seen so far is we've had two come in from the water department engineering side and present to us that they were looking at delaying the project of roughly $15 million to upgrade our plant to try the biomag. With that, there is no certainty that we'll get the EDUs out of this biomag to accommodate what we need to do. My understanding is that when we talk with the county commissioners, that there is no delay in the CIP with the upgrade of the sewer treatment plant. That being said, if there's no delay, looking at the 2020-21 timeline, we should be already in the architectural design stage of this. And it should be going on now, because the timeline to do that, 6 to 12 months roughly, give or take, and then that has to be passed on to MDE in order for them to get the approval. We're well past that 2021 timeframe. So there's some conflictions of what we're receiving with what they want to present to do for $1 million, which we have no guarantee that will work at this point. We're not sure what we'll get out of it, and push us back further on our upgrade. So that's where I stand with this. So there's really no clear communication from the county at this point. And that's what we're going to try to alleviate tonight. So, Councilman Saunders.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. First of all, thanks to the county staff, elected officials that are here this evening, as well as our residents that are interested in this topic and issue. To go to the mayor's first point, this is not about one singular building development. This is about Smithsburg's growth as a whole, long-term. We as an elected body of this town are trying our very best to look at the long-term needs of our community in this area and how that impacts the county, because we understand that it's a partnership between the both of us. I would also go back to the mayor's comment that we are a little, I guess, confused. If I go back and look at some of the headlines from some of the reporting that Herald Mail has done, it ostensibly talks about a delay in the wastewater treatment capacity upgrade. Elected officials on the Board of County Commissioners have said there is no delay, that the CIP is still scheduled to go as it is. Dan DeVito and Mark Bradshaw presented to us an alternative that is quite a cost savings to the county as a whole. If this biomag on steroids, as I like to call it, will work, that is a step in the right direction, but it may not meet all of the long-term growth concerns, not only here in Smithsburg, but of the entire county. There's one simple question, I guess, that can be asked and hopefully answered this evening for clarification point. Is the biomag option in lieu of the $14.5 or $15 million project? I attended the July 24th Board of County Commissioners meeting when I heard extensively Mr. Slocum reiterate that the county would save around $14 million by going with the biomag improvement versus the full $15 million upgrade. So to me, that means that we're going down one path while not continuing to go down the other path with the capacity upgrade at Smithsburg wastewater treatment plant. My understanding that both projects are funded, that the North End Capacity Management Project is funded, as well as the Smithsburg wastewater treatment project, which was on the topic of that day when we were there at the Board of County Commissioners. I understand that we here in Smithsburg pay our rates just like anyone else in the county do. We in part have paid those rates as county ratepayers to finance other projects throughout Washington County. We've asked that the county do the same for us in our time of need. Maybe at some point in time the town manager can go back and discuss some of the financials of why we're here. My understanding is that the funding for this project would be over a 20-year duration. Over the time of the payments through collection of fees, as well as the debt service that would be paid by the developers and developments in this community, that between the two resources of revenue, the Smithsburg project would almost pay for itself. As far as the project issues itself, there is no guarantee, if I'm correct in understanding what Mark and Dan presented as far as the biomag system. We think it will work. The engineers were asked to come up with this through a study, and they're working on it. There are concerns that because Smithsburg goes into a dry stream, that if we open up the permitting, there is no guarantee that we can go back into that permitting once we're done, if we only do the small upgrade. And like I said, the fundamental question or concern that I have is there seems to be a disconnect between if the project is going to be delayed If so, is there a timetable of when this? So I go back to my original question, which is, does the Board of County Commissioners, as it's currently constituted, decide or will decide tonight to give us a clear and absolute answer to the question of if we go down this process with the biomag as a temporary fix or Band-Aid, are they going to commit to the residents of Smithsburg and this end of the county to the full-term $15 million upgrade that is in the current CIP? And are we going to lose one for the other? That would be the question that I have for this county commission.
Yes.
I'm gonna
Defer to Rich.
defer to Rich right now.
Anybody who's been paying attention to this topic here in town, I've been pretty vocal about it. I'm not gonna repeat all the things that I've said previously, or what the mayor and Councilman Souders has said. I'm just gonna bring a little different angle to it tonight. We just had a meeting upstairs prior to this meeting with all of our town employees. It was a mandatory meeting they all had to come to. And we decided with a significant change in elected leadership here in the town, that we hear from them what their concerns were and what they thought they needed to move forward here in the town. We want to retain our employees. We want to encourage new employees for vacancies that we have or anticipate having. And to hear frustration from some of the employees that we rely too heavily on contractors in some regard for our public works department, and that they have been relegated to, I think one of the quotes was they're park jockeys, which means they're just picking up trash and doing things like that. For us to be more self-sufficient and handling our own business and not relying so heavily on contractors, this town needs to prosper. And for that to happen, we need some growth. And I've lived in this town for 15 years, maybe a little more than that. And in that time, I think there's been, I can count on one hand the number of houses that have been built in this town. We pride ourselves on being able to provide a level of service to the town, to the citizens of this town, without having to raise taxes. We want to continue to do that, but in order for us to do that, we need to have some growth, we need to change our income streams, and we need to expand. We need to prosper like the rest of the towns in this county have enjoyed prosperity over the last 10 years. The market has turned around. People are looking to build, and they're, fortunately for us, looking to come to this area, and we need to accommodate that. One of the biggest things that we had happen to us in the last year or so was we were told that the biggest employer in this town, Hadley Farms, was going to move. Well, now they may change their mind on that, and it's going to create, it's going to continue to keep people that work there spending money here. A lot of the employees live here in town and would be out of jobs if they moved. And so making a more prosperous town for everybody, citizens to live here, businesses that thrive, we need some growth. And we can't do that without the expansion of this system. So it's imperative that it happen. It's the right thing to do, and it should be done.
I think my question, and I want to thank the citizens that are here, any of the county officials that are here. I would like to say thank you because I know you guys work all day. I believe you were in session today, have things, so I appreciate you taking the time to be here. About a year ago now, I sat at a council meeting, one of my first, and it was where the county commissioners came in. And there was a lot of talk about the annexation and a lot of our citizens. And during that meeting, there was a presentation that talked about these upgrades, the planned upgrades, and that it had been on the plan and that those upgrades were moving forward even before a potential developer. So this is, a lot of this is being viewed because of a particular developer, I think. But it's my understanding that these upgrades were planned prior to any of that in the county's plan. So I speak for myself. I will not speak for my fellow council people. They're quite capable of doing that themselves. But I guess my biggest question is what I'm seeking for is, from that meeting, I gathered that this upgrade would occur, that it was planned, because part of the citizens' comments were concern over us having the utility capacity for future growth. That was a lot of what they focused on, was the town having the capacity. And by a county employee, with the commissioners present, that county employee said, this is planned, this will go forward. And now as we move forward, I think what I am most despondent about, when I look at collaboration and partnership, is after we move forward and the town has their annexation, and there's been months of documented viewpoints on the annexation, then the county comes up with, now we're not going to, as it's been presented, and the perception is, we are now not going to do this. And at no time, it is after our town manager and council members expressed questions that this biomag was even brought up. And someone can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, the biomag technology was not presented to us. It was only presented to us after we began to question, after hearing through sources that now the county was going to pull these upgrades. And so for someone who believes in transparency, I would like some feedback from county administration on, I get budgets and I get things change and our world is ever evolving. I understand that. What I would like to know is, why was someone not reaching out to us, knowing what this town has gone through for a year with annexation and what that was looking at in terms of these upgrades? Why there was no feedback? And everything that we've done, we've initiated. And I don't see that as collaboration. And so for me, I'm looking for, where's that transparency? And in the timeline from September, last September to now, why are these changes now being made? What has changed? And it's fine if we say, well, we had some research on this biomag. I get it. Then why were we not approached with this? Okay, county, town, we presented this. This is the way we're gonna go. Why were we not approached and sat down to have dialogue about that? Where we stood on that and where the county stood on that.
My name is Neil Smith. I'm the newest member of the council here in Smithsburg. I think I've been fortunate to have an opportunity to look at this from a kind of a clear lens. I don't have the background of the annexation and the previous plans, so I've had the opportunity to be able to look at it through a outsider's lens, if you will, being on the council here now for 3 months. Growth in Smithsburg is important. There are a lot of people that are wanting to move, as Councilman Hetherington alluded to. Growth in Smithsburg is good for growth in the county as well. The biggest issue I have with the ongoings of the recent months is the uncertainty of the infrastructure. As was mentioned previously, we met with our town employees to talk about ways that we could improve our town specifically, and even our town employees are concerned about infrastructure ranging from sewer. For me and the people that I represent in this community, to have a clear path, a clear understanding of where we're going, so that we can do the best for the citizens of Smithsburg, the citizens of Western Washington County, or Eastern Washington County, and Washington County as a whole.
Okay.
Well, I think about everything's been said here. County Commissioner's response.
Got anything else? We open it up to the floor. I don't believe we actually have, do we have a
Sign in.
Sign in.
Right there on the table.
that wants to speak?
We'll get it there. Thanks,
Yeah.
Rob.
Anna Burkett, would you like to speak? Because there's no indication whether yes or no on anyone speaking this evening.
Yes, I'm Anna Burkett. I was raised up here in Smithsburg, but I came back from Annapolis up here to my brother John Burkett. You probably know him. He's my brother. My concern is the sidewalks.
And we're here ready to discuss the wastewater treatment plant tonight. I do have your information though.
Oh, okay.
Very good. Looks like Teresa Crampton, is that correct?
I'm just Miss Anna.
Okay, very good. Donna Brighton.
I just thought it was a sign-in sheet.
That's no problem.
That's great. I'm happy to share what happened in Boonesboro with annexation of water and sewer, but I don't think you want to hear it. So.
Ed Forrest.
Just thought it was a sign-in sheet.
Same there, okay. So, let's go this route, I know Greg's gonna probably wanna speak, is that correct, Greg?
I was told it was a 50-50 sign up there. I don't have anything now.
Would you like to speak this evening?
No, thank you, sir.
Okay, all right. So, is there anyone in the room that'd like to speak other than the commissioners? Let's go that route, that would probably be the easiest way. And your name, sir?
Name and address.
Certainly. My name is Zachary Kiefer, 222 East Oak Ridge Drive, Suite 800. And that's Hagerstown. And I'm the attorney for Ridenauer Family LLC. As Deb mentioned, they are the property owners both within the town of Smithsburg limits and right outside. The land that's in the town is about 11 acres, located on Ledgersburg-Smithsburg Road and Stevenson Road, zoned town residential. They also own 105 acres on Stevenson Road. It's located in the county and zoned RT residential transition. The 105 acres is identified in the town's comp plan as proposed annexation area 5. As Deb alluded, this issue is of great importance to the Ridenauer family. Although the plans and discussions right now are preliminary, a lot of the potential developers that we've met with, that the Ridenauers have met with, their big question is dealing with water sewer upgrades and available EDUs. With this question still looming over the town and the Ridenauers' heads, the Ridenauers are concerned that they're gonna miss out and the growth of the town of Smithsburg and the potential sale and development of their property is going to be delayed as long as this issue remains unresolved. And I'll just simply close by saying that the Ridenauers appreciate the mayor and council's support and advocacy on this issue, and would simply respectfully request that the Board of County Commissioners stick with the time frame that's set forth in the CIP and not delay the issue of the wastewater treatment plant upgrades any longer. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Name and address?
Sure, our name is Jason Divalbeth, 11125 Bemis Durford Road in Greencastle. I represent Cloverly Hill LLC, the aforementioned recently annexed property that I think was one of the first dominoes to fall and started this conversation. I don't want to hijack the meeting or the conversation because it's much larger, as the councilman and the mayor have indicated. This conversation is much, much larger than this particular development, but because it was our annexation petition that started all, we might as well chime in with our 2 cents. And that's number one, to express increasing frustration that, you know, my client has been trying to develop this property for over a decade. It's where the county's comp plan says it ought to be, it's where the town's comp plan says it ought to be. We've struggled on 3 different occasions to complete the annexation. It's now completed, the property is zoned. We talked ad nauseum about water, sewer, roads, schools, all the infrastructure, all the services, all the everything. We thought, I guess, that we had satisfied all this question and concern, and we're ready to put our head down and proceed with the land use entitlement process, which is supposed to be the easy part of developing. And then this curveball comes out of the blue, somewhat, I guess, that the wastewater treatment plant upgrade has been in the CIP for over a decade. This is not new. It's not anything that came about because of this project. It's been in the CIP for over a decade. It's one of the reasons why my client bought this property and invested 10 years in trying to get it developed. So to have this curveball come and try to figure out whether the project will stay in place, whether it's gonna shift, whether it's gonna morph into a different type of project, just cast another level of uncertainty into the future of this development. And uncertainty is not good for developers for lots of different reasons. The most obvious, of course, is financing, future marketing, et cetera, et cetera. So all that being said, I think the uncertainty does create an issue, does create a significant concern. Wanted to go on record with that. The second, I guess, is to go ahead and say that if the intermediate upgrade to the plant to 450,000 gallons per day can be achieved efficiently, relatively quickly, that is earlier than or the same as the 600,000 gallon per day upgrade, if 450 can be achieved in the same or shorter time frame, and the long-term goal of 600 remains the long-term goal and remains in the discharge permit, Cloverly Hill is perfectly fine with that proposed intermediate tiered solution. But there's a lot of ifs in there. We need to be able to achieve all of those things, stay on budget, stay on time frame, keep the discharge permit of 600 intact for future. All that needs to be a condition of the 450. If that can be achieved, we're on board with that. And then the rest, I'm just here to listen, as the rest of you are, to see if we can arrive at a consensus to where the project is going, what the project actually is, and leave here tonight with more certainty rather than more questions.
Jason, it's my understanding through a
Yes, sir.
conversation with Debbie that Mr. Cross would like the email that he sent in as part of the record.
Yes.
And that is provided for county commissioners and staff on the desk so that you have it as well. But I just wanted to make sure we got that in there.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm Greg White, 11 Grove Creek Circle. I'm chairman of the Planning Commission for the town for the last 20 years. We are the authors of the comprehensive plan that has been revised and executed, I guess, from our standpoint. I think we're on target with what we had proposed in the comp plan, and we think that this issue needs to be resolved here so that we can continue to follow our comprehensive plan and continue to execute it as we had always had in our plans.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mark, Brad, you guys wanna speak this evening?
No,
You wanna
let's
go-
start with commissioner
Sure.
comments. I think
Sure.
all of you are eager to hear
All right.
some comments from the commissioners, so we can go right down the
All
line.
right, very
here.
good.
First of all, Terry Baker, County Commissioner, and I'd like to thank Ms. Smith for organizing and putting the meeting together. And I listened to each one of you speak, and I will tell you, I'll stand here, I have nothing to hide. I'll tell you exactly the truth. I've heard the word delay many times. I have never heard any county staff member or any county commissioner talk about delay in my presence. So if you are hearing someone from our side using the word delay, I'd like to know who's
Well,
saying it.
I can give you the recommended report by Mr. Bradshaw and Mr. DeVito that was dated on the 17th, where it clearly states that they are recommending the Smithsburg wastewater treatment plant has 161 EDUs available for future development, since the town is averaging only 2 EDUs per year and Cloverly is limited to 25, which is an incorrect statement. Moving forward, yada, yada, yada. It says, thus, I would recommend delaying the construction of the Smithsburg wastewater treatment plant upgrade. So that is a report that was presented to you on the
He sent
17th.
me that report. I've never reviewed that report, so I've never heard of any discussion of delay.
Okay.
Okay, and it's, and I will tell you, as an elected official, when I cast a vote for the county, I do it in what I think is the best interest provided, with the information provided me from the citizenry of the county. Sometimes I support things, sometimes I don't. I try to make my vote based on how it's going to affect that community and what that community wants. I don't live in this community, I live up in the Clear Spring community. So just like you as a body, sometimes you all are unanimous, sometimes you're not. We were a 3-2 vote on the annexation, and I obviously on the opposing side. And sometimes that's just how the votes work. Sometimes, many times we have a 3-2 vote. So the vote was made, and I can just tell you from my perspective, the vote was made. The commissioners supported the annexation, so now it's my job to support what Cloverly Hill is trying to do. I'm not here, it's got back to me that I've tried to railroad the sewer allocations and so forth. I've really had very limited discussion on any of this stuff. So for someone to come out and say that I've made a comment that I'm opposing the upgrades and so forth is totally false. So what I would like to ask each of you to do is if you hear someone make a comment that I'm not in support of something or in support of something, call me. I'm gonna tell you the truthful answer, so it's not gonna be hearsay or anything like that. But it's my job now, the annexation has taken place, it's my job now to help support staff and move forward with what you all are trying to accomplish out here. I have no problem with growth, I have no problem with Cloverly Hills project plans. It's my job now as an elected official to try to help support your community and move everything forward. But as far as a delay, I'm not in favor of any delays or anything like that there. I will tell you, I am in support of, if we can, and it's all, we have some numbers here, I am in support of trying to cut costs. So if I can cut costs and still accomplish what your goals are, I'm all for that. So I'm just, trying to get the conversation started here, and just wanted to thank you for hosting this. And,
Mr. Baker, I appreciate you taking the time to explain that. And I guess it goes back to my fundamental question that I asked at the beginning. So if you're not in favor of delaying what is in the current CIP, so tonight in front of this room.
I'm not trying to delay the upgrades needed for your community to move forward.
Okay, so I want clarification. So you fully support the biomag upgrade that Dan and Mark presented at a cheaper cost?
Well, I'm gonna have to hear the presentation again before I commit to any support.
I mean, I would assume that since it's in a recommended report.
Or what they're going to present tonight might be not what you all wanna see support.
Okay, but my understanding is then that you are not in favor, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I sat in the room on the 24th when this was discussed. And as I said, Mr. Slocum repeated many times that saving ratepayers $14 million for a $1.5 million project was a better bargain for county taxpayers. I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what he said.
Before you get a commitment on delay, or not delay, on the question, let's let them provide their report.
Well, you specifically said about you, so if you're okay, I just wanna.
I'm not interested in delaying anything.
Okay, that's great. And then the other thing that you had, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, I just want clarification on this. So, I get that there may be a cheaper alternative that could improve the current conditions. But that option clearly isn't the long-term solution to the problem.
And that's why we're here to discuss everything.
So what I'm trying to understand from you is, while we try this other alternative, are we still moving forward on the timeline that's already been established to complete the upgrade to that plant, which, as was alluded to by the mayor earlier, that design process should have already been started. And if it hasn't been, I'm assuming it'll start tomorrow?
Well, we're gonna hear what staff has to say. I don't know what the timeline is. I'm not gonna say next thing and say I know the timeline.
Well, just to meet the timeline that's in the CIP, you're gonna have to start immediately.
Well, and before we go to staff, I wanna, okay, I have a couple questions. As you said, you represent the entire county.
No, yes.
Yes. And my question is, and I will be very fair, the newspaper's here and it's being recorded. You have been very consistent on your vote, so you have stuck to your principles. You voted against the original annexation request in 2007. You voted against the comp plan, which included this development when it was adopted in 2010. So my question is, you and I had a conversation briefly on the 24th where you said, whatever I've heard about you in favor of or not in favor of growth is incorrect, but you oppose this annexation. So can I ask why? Because I went back through and looked at the minutes.
Because when I make my vote, I try to base my vote on what the community, when I say community, I don't mean just the town of Smithsburg. I represent the county, so I represent the town of Smithsburg plus the outlying areas. So when I listened to a lot of the people that had called me, they weren't in favor of it, so I try to make my vote supportive of what I think the people, the majority of the people in that community want.
And okay,
I don't live here.
I understand that, and that's a 50%
This exact
proposition.
same set of circumstances, all of it, new development, sewer upgrades would have happened in Clear Spring, would you have voted for it?
Depends on what the community wants.
Depends what your community would have wanted.
No, but, well,
Well, I mean,
so let's get back to the sewer upgrades, the timeline and so forth. I would like to hear what staff has to say. I'm not in favor of delaying anything. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Baker, can I ask you just, I want to ask a question because I think it's important. From my understanding and on where you stand, have you met with anyone from our town or within close proximity to our town who was very vocal on not being in support of annexation?
Have I met? There's been, I'm not gonna get into this, but there's been a couple of people within the community that not supported the annexation.
Okay.
you know who they are.
Did any of those conversations occur after this body voted to move forward with the annexation?
Not to my knowledge. Or my recollection.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And good luck with your project. Again, I'm elected to support what the commissioners want to move forward with, what your town is going to move forward with, and I'm going to be doing my best to support the upgrades. So that's as fair as I can be.
Going down the line here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you for allowing us to come here this evening.
State your name. I know who you are, but
Okay.
just state your name.
My name's Wayne Kiefer. I'm one of the 5 county commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to come here this evening and take part in your meeting. We consider our towns to be, our small towns, municipalities. I think we all come from a small municipality in Washington County. The needs that you face are tough and it's real. I think certainly in the small towns, that's where the rubber meets the road. You meet with your citizens every day and you know what their needs are. And just like we do, on a different scale and a different level. Listening to all of our municipalities, I think probably one of the #1 issues that they struggle with is water and sewer. I can think of 2 towns right now that are facing similar struggles. The town of Hancock, where I live, they have a lagoon system. They don't even have a sewer system. There are over $100,000 in fines with the Maryland Department of Environment because it's a complicated subject. Town of Boonesboro had some expansion that they were hoping would take place, and unfortunately, because the economy was the way it was, that didn't happen. So they're facing kind of the opposite struggle, where Hancock's over capacity, Boonesboro might be under capacity, and there's an opportunity here for Smithsburg to grow and to expand. And I will support a solution that meets your needs, but also the most cost-effective solution. I have to say, when our staff says that we can meet your objectives as a town, of the planning commission, of the developers, and we can save $14 million, I'm gonna wanna listen to that. You know, that's intriguing. I think our citizens, our rate users would expect us to wanna know, wow, how can government save $14 million? So we wanna know how we can save that money. I have a few questions for staff based on your questions that I have. I'm just gonna mention what they are. You don't have to answer right now, but hopefully when staff gives their presentations, some things that I think are important. Will the biomag provide the needed EDUs? I think the comment was made that we don't know for sure if that'll provide the number of EDUs that we need. When do we find out? Is it during the design phase? Is it when the system's built out? When do we know that? How soon? Will it meet the town's timeline? I know the developers want to get underway with their construction, with their building. With the biomag upgrade, to me, in my mind, and I'm not an engineer, I don't know water and sewer as well as some of these other folks do. To me, a $1 million project sounds like it might be a little more faster than a $14 million project, but I don't know. So can it meet your town's needs in a timely manner? And is the biomag a long-term or only an intermediate solution? I think we did a biomag upgrade at our Conakajig wastewater treatment plant a couple years ago, our largest wastewater treatment facility in the county, and it did some great things for us. So that provided and met some needs that we had at that time. So I'd like those questions answered when it's time for staff to answer. One thing I want to close on, what the councilwoman said about us needing to meet together, I think that's very important. When you see things in the newspaper, you don't get, answers questioned that way, innuendos or questions or comments. We need to have more of these meetings. I think we do. I think we're proving that to you that we care about Smithsburg because we're meeting with you tonight, and I think we're going to meet with you in 2 weeks. Is that right? We're going to have another meeting. totally talk about other issues, other needs that Smithsburg has. I can't imagine water and sewer is your only issue. Obviously, it's your most important right now, but you probably have other issues, other needs, and we want to help you with those as well. So I hope the communication continues. I think you're right, we could have better communication. I think we all could. That's our fault, that's your fault, that's everyone's fault for needing to get together. So I know many of you, some of you have my personal cell phone number. If you have a question, please reach out to me. We want to help you, we want to do what's best for you. Again, what I'm going to support is what meets the needs of Smithsburg and what your plans are at the most reasonable, cost-effective cost. Because I think that's what our citizens, our rate users would deserve, so.
So can I ask you, Mr. Kiefer?
Yes.
First of all, I appreciate you being here this evening. And I know you were appointed to the county commission, and you also voted against the express approval. Can I ask why?
There were a couple issues. Why? First of all, I asked a question of Mr. Cross when he came in about the tax incentive. Quite frankly, I think it was a little unfair that the taxes on that property were lowered. When his property when he became annexed into the town of Smithsburg, he pays a lower county property tax rate.
No.
I'm pretty sure that's right when he's annexed
No.
into the town of Smithsburg.
No.
A lower county property tax
No.
rate, and the property taxes aren't
That's
paid.
incorrect.
Okay. I had a conversation with Mr. Cross. I'd like to get that clarified with
Okay.
him, with him and with our county staff. But when a property is annexed into town limits, they pay a lesser county tax rate.
No.
And-
Well, okay. If that's a negotiated annexation agreement with you, that's you.
I
That's
live
not
in
what
an
we
incorporated
negotiated.
municipality. I live in an incorporated municipality. My county tax rate is a little less than if I lived down.
Yes, I know.
Tax differential.
Tax differential.
Yes, your tax differential, yes.
Okay, thank you, that's. So, the property taxes wouldn't be paid in full until it's built out and it's sold, the separate properties are sold. That was
No.
an incentive that was offered by the town of Smithsburg.
No, that's incorrect.
That was my understanding of it in a conversation that I had. Also, I have to say, when I was here and at the meeting, you're right, I was appointed, I wasn't elected. And when I listened to the room and the people that came out in support of it, in opposition to it, by far, there was great opposition to it. Again, as Commissioner Baker said, I know you represent the people in the municipality of Smithsburg. We represent all of Washington County. So their needs, their concerns, I think, needed to be taken into consideration.
Well, when you have these types of meetings, you generally don't get people coming out saying, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. You get the naysayers, they're the ones, the squeaky wheels. It happens at your meetings, because I watch yours, it happens at ours. So I think that's a pretty tragic assumption to make when you're here one time and hear the Joe Lanes of the world and the ones that I'm sure are the ones that met with Commissioner Baker to try and
Sir,
kill this
I've really
process.
never met with anybody.
Well, and
I
that
just
that
made
goes
it.
to my point. My point
I
being
mean, honestly,
is,
we're here to
Well, hold on,
talk about
my
water and
other
sewer
my other
needs of
thing is,
Smithsburg.
this other process, there's a lot of ifs and maybes involved. We know what will absolutely fix the problem, do the upgrade.
Okay, and that's what we're here to discuss. We want to find out what staff's going to be recommending, and all we're doing is just going down the line here, telling us our positions on the delay.
Well, it seems the recommendation has already been made.
Right.
Sir, that hasn't been, well.
Well, we just read it, we just read it.
to go back to my,
go into detail when you.
yeah, and I'll go as quick as I can, Rob, I promise. But my question to you again, and you had said that you were here for the town hall meeting in October of last year, and you heard both gentlemen that voted against the annexation express approval. I don't remember seeing or getting a phone call from an elected body of the county commission. I don't believe they came before us to ask us our financial needs and what we as a town and municipality were looking for. And if the opponents to the annexation were your source, a lot of their information was factually inaccurate, and I will say it, they were lies that were spread through this community. And perhaps if this dialogue would have occurred before that express approval vote, maybe it would be a different outcome. But we're not there now because you both have indicated you only took 50% side of one issue or topic.
But sir, in all due respect, okay, I've already said the vote was taken. Sometimes it's a 3-2 vote, sometimes you're on the winning end, sometimes you're not. So we're here to talk about moving the project forward and finding out what your needs are.
I believe what Councilman Souter's trying to do is paint a full picture of what transpired prior to this and why we're here.
I understand that, but
So
we're
I
here,
think it's what
but
he's trying
that's
to do.
already done.
So, okay, let's move on.
We're here now, please take the opportunity to share with us.
In response, and I appreciate that the fact that you guys came out tonight, and I appreciate the line of communication you went to establish. This should have already been established. And I know that my town manager reached out to certain bodies numerous times requesting communication with you guys. And it did not come until we had to pull some teeth basically to have it happen. So that being said, again, I appreciate you coming this evening, but this should have happened a long time ago. And it was not any fault on our part when it comes to the communication line because we tried to establish that. So that being said, we'll move on. Jeff.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. If I grimace, my knee, my back, neck's hurting. So please don't take that.
You should be okay.
Please don't take my body language as that. My experience 4 years as a Williamsport Town Councilman led me to know that in a municipality you're at the bottom of the food chain. And that when you put all the people in the same room, the truth comes out. So thank you very much for everyone organizing this meeting to talk. I know from experience, as town councilman at Williamsport, that the cost of the town for services go up, go up, go up. You continue to have that. I have a nice circle drawing, I should have brought it. Here's your town tax base. Here's your bills growing, your bills growing, your bills growing. How do you buy that man down there another $10,000 vest? How do you buy his officers more vests? How do you do that unless you go after the individual taxpayers and raise their taxes? It's important to have utilities, roads, bridges, water, sewer infrastructure available for growth in the future. And why I applaud you tonight, you're sitting here not worrying about your town, but you're looking at infrastructure and growth in this community long past the time you serve the people. You're making decisions that will have a positive effect on not just Smithsburg, but the rest of the county by looking forward to have that infrastructure in place. If you're a business or a company, you come in here and you're not sure that infrastructure there, you're going to West Virginia. You're going to Pennsylvania where they offered Hadley Farm 16 plus acres, $11 million to build a project, 16 plus in Washington County. So I support the biomag and moving forward with the plan to assure the future, not just Smithsburg, but Washington County. And that's why I voted for the annexation and support this comp plan moving forward.
Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
clear, Jeff.
Thank you. Commissioner Barr?
Well, good evening, John Barr, County Commissioner.
Good to see you, John.
And I feel a little bit like Jack here, I guess the last guy on the end. Obviously, this is a bigger issue than just the town of Smithsburg. And for a number of years now, 3 terms to be exact, you know, I feel for Hagerstown and Williamsport and Boonesboro and Smithsburg. And Smithsburg is not alone in this. As you've heard here this evening, not only is growth inevitable, it's important. It's extremely important to continue. If you don't grow, you die. And as a contractor, I know that very well. I might add also that it's not about me, and it's not about what's best for me. 3 years ago, almost exactly, I was handed a set of blueprints for a design build job that was ours. And it was for your Hadley Farms dairy here in Smithsburg, and it said Antrim Township, and I about freaked out. And I didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do with them, because there was a moral and ethical standard that these drawings were given to me in confidentiality to proceed with electrical design and to move forward. And I slept on that for a couple of days, and I'm like, this is not something that's even conceivable for a business that I think's been in this community for 55 years. And I rode on the edge of doing what I thought was right, and actually I went to the builder and I'm like, this can't be good. I mean, I don't care if the land's free. And as it turned out, I think it was a rock pile anyway. So my point is, yes, growth is extremely important. It must take place. And I think that for me, It's doing what's needed right now today. If I'm bidding a job and I need a backhoe, I may need a bigger backhoe in 3 years, and we've got to work together as we are doing here this evening. And it may start out as $1 million project, and 3 years from now, it may be a 5 or a 10 or a $15 million project. But we've got to be able to communicate, reach across the table, work together, and move proportionately as these EDUs become reality. I think you're going to hear this evening that, if you take a time lapse and look at the past 10 years, you've only used something like 17 EDUs. Well, that's the history. That's behind us. Moving forward, it might be 17 a year. It might be 17 a month, and that's what we've got to work together on. And that's what I think we're all here this evening to not sing Kumbaya, but to work together, move forward. What is anticipated? What is planned? What is committed? If Mr. Cross is committed to do his project in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, and make sure that our infrastructure is in place as those things happen. So,
And Commissioner Barr, I just want to make it clear that I understand that the science changes, the technology changes, and everything that you said about growth being necessary or you die. I understand all of that. And I guess my biggest concern is I completely support trying other things, but not at the expense of keeping this established timeline moving forward. If this works, then we're just gonna be that much farther ahead. But I don't wanna push back 2 years, a rebuild of the treatment plant, while we wait to see if this works, because if it doesn't, now we're 2 years farther away from where we need to be. So I think these things need to happen concurrently. And I think that's what we're asking from the county commissioners is, we're willing to try whatever next greatest magic bullet is out there, but not at the expense of sacrificing time for this project.
understand.
And that's the best, part of your,
So-
just the way you said it.
If I can ask Commissioner Klein and Commissioner Barr, you voted to approve the express approval. What I've not heard from you definitively is you have the same information that we have. Where do you stand based on the information that was circulated? Are we looking, in your opinions, at the biomag or proceeding, moving forward with what was planned?
I'll go first. I support moving both concurrently. If we do this and this doesn't work, you're 2 years behind the 8 ball. And what projects, what tax base did you lose during that 2 years? And the additional time it takes to do the upgrades. You could be 5 years. We're in a competitive nature here in Washington County with our neighbors to the north and south. We need to be aggressive and overcome these challenges with our utilities and infrastructure in place for now, short-term and long-term. Like I said before, you guys are putting the heart of the county way ahead past your service here, looking out for the future of your town. And I would support both being concurrent. Is that pretty clear how?
As clear as it can be,
Thank you very much.
And before we hear from the staff, just add one more thing. I agree that that's the main concern that we need to hear, an assurance that if the biomag does not work, that we're doing this as a concurrent project so that we can continue to move forward. But I just need to reiterate that this is not solely for the development of Cloverly. Cloverly, as Jason, stated, that was the initial cog in this wheel, but we have other people waiting in the wings. So it cannot stop with just the upgrade of the biomag that's gonna give us, and again, we have a wide span. Is this going to be up to anywhere between 330, 350 to 450? And then that's a huge span of an unknown. It's not gonna give us what we're looking at for future growth. And then we're talking about I&I that gets into it. Then what happens if we have failing septic systems out here at Holiday Acres and the state comes in and says, you need to add those? Does that mean we place them as priority, which I well know that can occur if the state intervenes and you put the development on hold? So if we can't just plan on just an intermediate upgrade, knowing that all of these things are waiting in the wings. So I'm very concerned that we just sit here and say, we're only gonna do an intermediate upgrade and not plan for the future full plan development for the town of Smithsburg.
Well, you're not the only one. Our developers that are eager to join in our
Exactly,
community
that's why these people are here
are all
this
on
evening
hold
to tell you that
because
they
of
all,
the unsecurity.
although we understand we can't give a full commitment to these people, they just need the reassurance, as you know, is working with the county, and everyone else knows that they have to have some kind of an assurance before they can even begin to put a shovel in the ground or even commit to the town of Smithsburg, come to us, that they have to have a known variable that they can, of the utilities to be able to begin their projects. And we have to have that from you.
Commissioner Barr, I believe you were.
Thank you, you almost got me off. No, I agree, it's a simultaneous track, I think, and what's good and what's positive for Smithsburg is good and positive for Washington County. And you, again, back to my point, you gotta look at the bigger picture. The outer areas of Smithsburg is growth potential areas for the county, so it's a win-win. And again, having 40 years in the contracting business, and I'm sorry that I gotta keep referring back to that, but I don't bid a job or chase a job and ignore all the other potential over here. I mean, that'd be foolish. So you gotta go down both roads. I've got, looking at all avenues moving forward.
Mr. Keefe? Your stance, as far as your stance on dual seeded curve?
I think
I missed that, I'm sorry.
if we're wanting to do the dual, I don't know, and I don't have a background, or again, I don't have the knowledge that some of these folks back here have. If we're gonna do both of them simultaneously, why not just do the bigger project? And save $1 million instead of $14 million? What? So I'd like an answer on that. I don't know why we would wanna do both at the same time. So I would like that answer. But again, if staff says we can meet your needs and save $14 million, I want to hear a little more about that.
And this project, for those who are not aware of, was actually scheduled for 2013, 2014 initially, and was put on the back burner because the economy mostly at that point, but the diligence of the town in reducing their I&I and doing some other things that were able to create more EDUs so that we could stay up where we were. So we feel that, again, based off of lack of communication or communication, how you want to look at it, that this is on a track to be delayed again. And we don't feel that is right, so. Guys?
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm gonna.
Would you think so? Absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, I would, thank you. So, this is Dan's first day as director of.
Thank you very much. Hey, thanks for at least wearing purple, we appreciate it.
Other than throw Dan to the wolves immediately, I'll explain what some of this is about. First of all, I can assure you, for whatever it's worth, no commissioner has come and said delay or do anything. Yes, you do have a report, and I will say that I've seen that report. Here's what we do have. Just as you've changed with mayor, and your ideals and your vision has changed. It was, the town manager I think can agree, at one time it was 25 a year. That's what Mr. Cross was told, correct?
No, that was an inaccurate.
No.
He was never even told
You're right, he was told that, but that is not a policy.
He did tell us he was told that, so.
Okay, let me clarify. He was told that by the previous mayor, but that is not a policy of the
Okay.
town.
And that's,
Yes.
trust me, I'm listening to everything that's been said both tonight and previously. So I understand that he said the prior mayor said that, yes. But what I'm getting at is change. In less than a year, the mayor has changed. Many council members have changed. That's happened. In a year, I as administrator have changed. Used to be Greg Murray. Greg brought along Biomag. So, and Julie's here as well. She was heavily involved in Biomag. I think they still sit on various state boards and have expertise with MDE about Biomag and all kinds of other technology. So change is inevitable, and your change in direction is one thing to be accounted for. The change in the county direction is also to be accounted for.
I've listened to a number of folks when we went through our budget cycle that said landfill fees are too high, water sewer rates are too high, what can you do? I've heard my CFO say the model says it's gonna keep going up until it goes down. I have to look at people in the eye and say, when they ask me, are you doing the best you can do? These four gentlemen ask me, are you doing the best you can do? Sometimes that's not the easiest thing to do. And certainly, working for them in this community in Washington County, I don't have any intention to do anything that's gonna upset you or them or shut down any potential growth. It's been all about growing the tax base, not growing the tax rate. That's what I've heard, it beat into me, and I'm actually proud of it. So, when we talk about change, that's one aspect of change. I would like to bring up the curveball that Jason threw up, because at the DAC committee, Mr. Cross, and I'm not saying anything here that has changed our opinion or the way we're headed, but I think it's also important to hear both sides. When Mr. Cross brought a set of plans to the DAC committee about a year ago, he said, I need 160 EDUs. Okay, there were 161 available. It grew in a meeting that we had about 2 months ago to 200. By the end of the meeting, the number of EDUs was 225. What's the number today?
250.
250.
If the development's developed all the way out.
Okay, so
Unless 275 from Mr. Cross's place.
275 as of today. So, and I'm not saying that means I'm right and you're wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if we talk about change, there's change from both sides. So that has to be understood. Really good question. Why didn't we reach out? Councilmember Weaver asked. We were actually looking at this as this came up. This was not a hide and seek game. I can assure you of that. We found, and I don't know how it became relevant. I think it's worth sharing how it became relevant that we may be able to do this with biomass, and how long ago we actually learned that. Because I remember getting maybe 4 months ago that we thought this may be a potential. We didn't want to rush out and hit the newspaper and say, hey, or to you and say, hey, this is going to happen. We actually wanted to develop this and know if it was had some potential. Jim, do you have those handouts?
I do. Mark actually has the actual 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, having thought this would be our meeting, we had an agenda, but it has some relevant information for all of you that I think, I'm certainly hoping that addresses your concerns.
What's today's briefing?
I think I have.
So we've talked about change, we've talked about everything on hold. One thing about being on hold, right now, today, there are 161 EDUs for the town. If Mr. Cross wanted to buy 100 EDUs today, tomorrow, if he wanted to come in and say, I want to buy 100 EDUs to protect myself, I want to buy 160 to protect myself and my business interests, he could do that. He could have done that last year when he brought it to the town.
Is that an actual, because we were under the assumption you could not pre-buy allocation.
He can buy them. He can buy,
Okay, I'm sorry.
okay, that's okay. So we have, looking at what you said, Deb, we've been told 138 lots that have been subdivided and ready for sale, right? Those have been in the queue for some time. So what we've done is we've tried to take and combine in this document, I think you all have now, on the very back page, we've tried to nail in a matrix what the comparison is of the two. And this is simply a numbers that comes down to what's the best thing for Smithsburg, what's the best thing for the ratepayers. And there's simply two alternatives here. To be completely transparent, we don't know today if it's 330, if it's going to go to 400,000 gallons per day, or if it's going to go to 450,000 gallons. I'd like to tell you 450. I'd like to tell myself that. We're not sure. So in alternative 1 and 2, the first few columns are the same. It's at 1 million versus 15. average growth, and I think this is what stymied the council members and the mayor and the town manager, is average growth has been 1.2 EDUs over the last 10 years. That means one EDU's been sold this year. You have 161. So if you take that average growth, this is obviously a big change with your union leadership. New EDUs from 315 to 540. That's the potential under alternative one. Number two, potential is 1,485 EDUs. So then we get to total. What can be done total today with this lower cost and the higher cost? 476 to 701. Let's just round it and say it's somewhere between 500 and 600. The $15 million is 1,646 total EDUs. Let's take that 250 that Mr. Cross gave us. Let's take the 138 that was already available and subdivided. Put them together, you get 380 EDUs. Let's take your last growth from the past 10 years and multiply it by 4. So right off the gate, as soon as the new facility is open, you instantly sell 388, gone, off the shelf. And then for the next few years, you sell 4. That's at the absolute minimum, that's 22 years. That gets you 22 years into the future.
But that's assuming our previous average, not an assumption.
No, it's also assuming that you're instantly gonna sell 250 plus another 138 lots that haven't been sold. I'm not saying you won't, and I think with the new mindset, you're certainly gonna sell more than you have. You may sell 10 times or 20 times as much. A number thrown out of 40 a month, I don't think that's gonna happen. I think that's unrealistic to say 40 per
But we're
month.
also only narrow focused on the Smithsburg. My understanding was with going to the 600,000 and the increased amount of EDUs, there is a possibility that that could be shared and transferred throughout the county. So as to Commissioner Klein's point, we're not solely focused on Smithsburg.
That's right.
But we're looking at the total picture. And again, we could have, very easily maxed everything out, and if somehow we can sell allocations before permits, which is something that we have been told throughout this process was not an option, we could have sold and been at multiple capacity and then been screaming with our hair on fire that, like with the transfers that you're talking about at the north end and others, that you oversold allocation. We could have done that to the county. But we, through our due diligence back in 2012, 2013, tried to push this project off as much as we could. And then we're looking at it from a long-term perspective of, again, not just solely here in Smithsburg. And we have a demand now. We have a developer that wants 275, as Mark indicated earlier. Another gentleman just came in today and said they've got lots. We've got 52 in Mountain Shadows and some other here and there. The demand is now for just the interim, the 388 that you added up. And again, to Councilman Hetherington's point, to look at 20 years in the future, this isn't all about just keeping it in-house to us.
It's not at all. I'd like to explain that.
Okay.
So we took a look and said, okay, because part of Greg's plan, Julie's plan was, you're gonna be able to take EDUs and you're gonna be able to ship them down to Conococheague. Okay, well, let's look at the lifespan of Conococheague. Do you realize that the $32 million upgrade got us not 1 ounce of additional capacity? So $12 million of all of our taxpayer money went for a nitrogen reduction, correct?
And 400,000 gallons of additional capacity.
From Weinbrenner, correct?
No, Weinbrenner is nothing.
Additional 400 EDUs?
Plus
400,000 gallons.
400,000 gallons, that's something that we'll have to,
That was the transfer from.
that was from
That was the
Weinbrenner.
transfer from Weinberger.
That was from
There's no
Weinbrenner.
transfer from Weinbrenner.
Weinbrenner went up to 600,000 gallons per day. We're now spending about $70,000 extra in chemicals per year because of that additional capacity. So that did transfer, and if it, we'll certainly get it resolved one way or another. But from what we understand, that's a transfer. So yes, we can go to Conococheague. What's the lifespan there? The lifespan there and that's for the commissioners to be concerned about, obviously, and staff as well. The lifespan there is anywhere between 30 to 50 years with the current timeframes and EDUs we have. So we will be concerned and are looking broad scope. We're also looking at Weinbrenner, which uses 100,000 gallons, which is a 600,000 gallon per day plant. It takes a lot more money to run a 600,000 gallon per day plant and more ENR, more restrictions than it does a 500,000 gallon per day plant. So that's all things that have to be considered. The next thing is, as far as no guarantee. While there's a concern about no guarantee, I think I'd like to say that with a 22-year lifespan of that, so the minimum, up to 41 years with the $1 million option, 96 years with the $15 million option, there's a guarantee, there's a pretty good guarantee, at least a 28-year guarantee, 22 to 28. Whereas there's no guarantee that instantly Mr. Cross is gonna sell what was 160 last year, what was 200 then, what was 225 a couple months ago, and what today is 275 EDUs. I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying, as we talk guarantees, there's no guarantees that way either. So while I hope it's true and I hope it develops, and I can stand here and tell you, I think we'll be prepared if it does. We have to understand there's got to be some compromise, and certainly this discussion, which I appreciate you listening. So we take it another way, and we say, what's the average over the last 50 years? How many EDUs have you sold per year? And that's 17. 17 EDUs per year. That includes your large development and everything else. If we take that, that's 28 years at a minimum. So 28 years of growth at 17 EDUs per year. And if you exceed that, then that 28 will certainly come down. Maybe it'll approach 20. We have a 10-year CIP plan. And these numbers are all to get to 90% of your capacity. These numbers are all to the point where you start to begin to put in the plan that says, I've got to have a design, which is where we are today with Smithsburg. So then we look at cost per new EDU. $6,900 per EDU in the town. The cost per EDU under the $15 million plan, and that doesn't, that's to install it, is $10,000. So a cost on the taxpayer of $4,100 per EDU, and that's assuming that all 1,646 EDUs are sold in some short time frame. 1,646 EDUs is obviously, it's about twice what you have now. So Smithsburg would have to grow twice in size to sell all those EDUs to keep that price at 10,000. If you don't, then as you said, it's financed in perpetuity for a very, very long time. The good news is that if we look at this in balance, there is entirely a balance that can satisfy you, Mayor, and your ambitions, the town's ambitions, the council members' ambitions to grow without stopping. We have that in place today. There's been numerous discussions now at this point because this is it is the top priority for the staff to say, we're not going to be in the way. And the challenge has even been among us, tell me what it'll take for this new plant to get it permitted, to get it built. Tell me what it'll take for this upgrade to get it permitted and built. The folks, I have a high confidence level in our staff. I think we can take full advantage of what Greg and Julie have done in investing in the biomag system. If it does what we now think it can do, they're absolute geniuses for taking the risks. How many years ago? 10 years ago? 7. Which was groundbreaking at the time. So, if it does that, if it does here in this plan, what we're convinced by our experts, not just our experts here, but our experts that are consultants, it will serve you. It will serve you 20 years and beyond And it will serve Conococheague quite possibly as well. So I would like you to consider it's not an either-or position. And I can assure you and the commissioners that at any time, and there will be one new commissioner, so maybe that's Donna or this gentleman, and that
Mr. McKinley.
Mr. McKinley.
Any other candidates?
We know there will be one. We know there will be at least one.
So looking at you when I said Ed Forrest.
So, I feel the stress in the room. I don't like stress at all for my staff. I don't like it for my bosses. I don't like it for you. So I would like to assure you, this does not appear to me to be a risky proposition. I think it'll allow you the growth that you want. It'll allow the rates that you want as much as possible, that the whole county wants as far as rates go. We are challenging, and they can both tell you, we've challenged them to say, how can we convince that model that we have that we don't have to keep raising rates each year? It's a risk. I'm an engineer, I understand. It is still a risk. Even if it's a 1% risk, it's a risk. But there are risks with other operations too. So that's what we have. I haven't covered all the bases. There is this information. We will be back in September. If at a moment's notice, this proposal that we have looks like it is a hiccup, looks like it's gonna start gasping for air, we will transition and get there. Now, I believe we're gonna know, we already know quite well. I believe we're gonna know entirely solid in the very near future. There's been discussions with, as I've said, the regulatory authorities and so forth. The last thing I want to do is put them in harm's way and be standing here to say something that won't work. So, with that, we've talked in lieu of, and I would like to address that, because the moment that our staff did say, and I'm not blaming them, I'm blaming myself, we're gonna keep moving with this process, I thought to myself the same thing you're thinking. Wait a minute, you keep moving. What we actually discussed was with the CFO and the board at the time, we don't have to change anything in the capital project. They both require funding at the stage we're at, which is FY19. The money's gonna be spent. We're actually already under contract. The money is being spent to proceed with this process today.
Which process, the bio or the?
The bio,
Okay.
yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Go ahead, I got a couple.
The biggest thing listening to you, Rob, and believe me, I totally respect and understand what you're saying, especially when it comes to finances and spending taxpayer dollars. But the biggest thing that I think we all need to walk away from here is the assurance that Biomag, and if Biomag would work, I don't think any of us would have a concern here because it's gonna get us what we need. But when I'm listening to you, I still hear if.
That's because it's like getting on an airplane, you want to know that it's 100% safe. As soon as we have more, we will tell you. What I would like to do is if we can return on the 18th of September,
Okay.
and we can fully digest what we've heard from you, what we've heard from our commissioners, and come back to you and present better, even better, this is quite solid, but even better information. It says this is where we are, these are the assurances we have. We'll bring the engineer with us, who has the discussions with NDE, who has better information even than us. I think that might help as well.
And you stated in the near future, that's pretty vague, and what timeline are you looking at for the actual, to get that answer on whether this is gonna work and what it will produce?
What I'm gonna defer to Dan and Mark on that, but I think what we've already begun the regulatory discussions.
Yes.
So,
Before you two jump in, I just have a couple questions for Mr. Slocum. You had mentioned the Weinbrenner upgrade, that currently is only doing about 100,000 in capacity, but could do 600,000. And if I'm not mistaken, that was part of a comprehensive upgrade to that facility. When was that done? When was the construction completed? Okay. So part of my question is that with the understanding that hopefully at some point in time, what I read in the Herald Mail this morning about the last partial of that had been sold, was with the vision that we are going to finally develop up on the mountain. And that's why the county was proactive in making sure there was capacity to handle that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So as part of that Weinbrenner increase, were parts of that funding or bonding issue done through rate hikes with customers currently? So my question is, me as a a customer rate in Smithsburg, did my rates increase or was a portion of my rates to go to that project? Probably so, correct? Okay. So, what would be, and this is a rhetorical question because we can't answer it, what would be the cost if we waited on the construction upgrade, the $15 million project that we're talking about, in 4 years? If we do the biomag, it doesn't work, we're set back another 2 years. Or as Rob has indicated, if we went ahead and did the $15 million upgrade and we had available commodity for 20 years, what's the cost in 20 years for this project down here? And those are all rhetorical, because we can't answer them.
It is. But here's another question in 20 years, and one that probably Greg would be the best expert to answer. The plant that was upgraded just now in Conicajig was originally built, how many years, when was the last upgrade to that?
Early 90s.
Okay.
It was under construction when I started in 99.
So,
And DNR was in 99.
so 2000, say 2000 is fair, 2000 to 2018, that's 18 years. What I just shared with you, and this is why it takes a complete table to lay all this out. 18 years, we were back in 18 years, $32 million in 18 years, and as I said, we will sort that out. But as I said, to my knowledge, there was no capacity. It was essentially a load reduction project.
Well, to circle back to my point is the county commission, board of commission at that time, because many of you were on that county commission then, had the foresight to see that by going with a larger capacity upgrade at Weinbrenner, when this parcel was finally sold, a developer was going to come in and make something on the Fort Ritchie base. Capacity was already there and ready to go. So if you would have waited another 3 years, what would your cost been if you didn't do it 3 years ago? And I guess that's part to my point is, if we can do it for 15, and look, we as an elected body go through the same thing that you gentlemen do, that we have to balance what the needs are today with the long-term needs, and then we have to look at our friends, neighbors, and constituents in the face and tell them that we're trying to do the best with their tax dollars that we can possibly do. So I respect and commend all of you for that. But at the same time, I sit here and listen, we had the forethought to go ahead and do a 600,000 gallon upgrade capacity for Weinbrenner, knowing that we were gonna have growth coming. You've got the same scenario here in Smithsburg that can not only, again, focus down into one community, but about 40% here, give, whatever the numbers may be, of other potential growth opportunity within the county.
And if you consider that Cascade becomes a roaring success up there, it's gonna come down the mountain. And while all of that may not be here in town, it's going to be here. So, like I said before, I get this interim step, but that doesn't in any way create a circumstance where you ignore alternative 2 from going forward. And pushing it back is gonna make it more expensive. And the growth that we have on the table here, if we lose it, you talk about not being stressful for you and your bosses and your staff. Let none of this happen and this town go unincorporated and you have to pick up the pieces and now maintain this now because we can't afford to do it anymore.
Yeah,
Talk about stress, take on all of that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to something that says there are 161 EDUs today available, ready to sell. There are 138 lots today in Smithsburg that have been subdivided and I'm not saying it as contention that means either one is right or wrong. I'm saying that has to be taken into consideration.
You're correct, Rob, but I think economical issues that restricted projects in the county, restricted projects here in the town. So we can say all we want about 1.2 per year, because nobody was growing or building a damn thing because of the economy. Well, that's changed, and now people want to do it. So I don't care about that 1.2.
Well, my other thing is.
We need it now.
And Dan or Mark can go to this. And I'm almost positive, I specifically asked in that meeting that Deborah and the mayor were at. My understanding is you cannot pre-sell allocations, correct? So to say we can start selling them off tomorrow is an inaccurate statement.
You can sell them for the 138 lots that you have.
No.
Yes, you can.
Okay, if they apply for a permit, correct?
Yes, if they come in to build a home today, those EDUs are there.
Right.
They're there, they're ready to sell. Yes.
But they can't be pre-sold.
Right, but that predicates on.
It's first come, first served.
Correct.
It is. What that's doing though, and where he's getting to go with this, and where you're going with this, is that will have an effect on Cloverly, on what their direction will be when they require 275 now, with the Ridenhour family as well, and what their direction is gonna go. So you're looking, currently, we have 138 developable lots with 160 couple EDUs. We need to look outside of that, and I'm sure that's what you guys did with, on the mountain. You did your upgrade on the mountain. How long did that set before we get to the stage we are now? And that's still not guaranteed.
And they haven't started developing yet,
So-
so it could be
but-
10 years
but-
before they develop.
Exactly.
But you've already done the work.
But
to
you've already
provide
done, right,
the
exactly.
infrastructure.
But get back to Conococheague for just a moment. 10 years, it could be 10 years. In 19 years, the technology may warrant MDE to come in and say, spend another 32 million. Spend another, redo that. That
You live in
could
the state of
happen.
Maryland, you know how that is, that changes
Yes,
year to year.
It changes regularly. So what I'd like to do is on the 18th, we can come back, we can actually try to have even the numbers of alternative one boiled down better, because it is arranged, but we wanted to be transparent in the fact of what the engineers have told us, what the regulatory authorities have told us, as far as the potential there.
Rob, I have a question. On alternative one, the chart shows what we get for $1 million. What keeps us from going to $2 million and getting an increase in all of those numbers?
It's a different aspect. These gentlemen can tell us better.
Would you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yes, Rob, you can.
So the $1 million is the maximum amount that we can spend for the available new EDUs that you have on the chart. So we can't go more new EDUs.
There are certain components of the upgrade that we can do with spending $1 million, which increases capacity. Once we reach a certain level, the only increase that is available to us is the more expensive tankage increase.
So what's the maximum number of new EDUs under alternative one that would be possible?
Somewhere around 600.
540.
That's at their highest point.
I guess my question is, you have new EDUs 315 to 540.
If this works.
If we have to spend additional money to get to the 540, is that possible?
Sorry.
If we have to spend additional cost, additional money to get to a guaranteed 540 EDUs, is that possible?
Our engineers are going to have to look at the existing systems to determine, like the influent pump station's adequate, the UV. There are some other components we have to look at besides the biologicals.
So that range 315 to 540.
So the answer to your question is, it's quite possible, if you take the bottom number, which is 315, that you can provide marginal expense, additional expense, 1.5 million, upgrade pumps. That is quite possible. That is actually where we are right now. We're at a base level, and we're looking to grow from that to get to the higher number.
Because I think that's what they're looking for. They want to see the total number of EDUs within a reasonable tolerance.
Absolutely, yes.
Because 315 to 540 is quite a.
That's exactly.
It is, and we wanted to, our mission here is to be entirely transparent. Correct. So that's where we are.
Just
We
charge
will
the
know
truth
more in
as we
2
have
weeks.
it.
Julie, did you have something?
But I just wanna mention the wine burner upgrade, because it was a major permitted at .6 before it was upgraded, under the ENR regulation, it had to be upgraded to ENR. So that was a mandatory project.
Okay.
So it wasn't just for growth. However, projection, and that goes back to when COPT was up there and their projected build out of the facility, did support maintaining that facility at .6.
So the silver lining is, because of a forced mandate, you now have the capacity to handle whatever growth comes there after its incarnations over the last 30 years.
It was, and that's, I really appreciate both of you being here, because rather than talking after the meeting or about inaccuracies, I'd really like to address them now.
Well, and if I can
So
answer
if there
your,
was, please.
a question you had brought up about the the plant was cottage was 4.1, after the upgrade is 4.5 MGD. That 400,000 gallons per day, nitrogen and phosphorus. The nitrogen is supported by the GST trade in the Conococheague permit. The phosphorus currently has been lowered from the 0.3 standard to, I believe, 0.27, because that additional phosphorus loading for the 4.5 would come from the Smithsburg trade to Conococheague.
GST was Garden State Tannery. When they closed inside the urban growth area, we were able to take that load and put it in Conococheague.
Right, and I think there is everyone wants to say that loading came from Weinbrenner. It did not. At one time, we thought there was a 1 MGD permit issued for Weinbrenner, but there was never any supporting data, so there was no trade from Weinbrenner in any of the permits.
State always had 0.6.
Yeah, state only said 0.6.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
Can I chime in real quick, please, before the rest of the purple
Well,
shirt
I mean, these two gentlemen have been sitting here, I'm just waiting to hear from them, but yes, Jason.
Please, go ahead.
Well, it's like the suspense is building, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna be the finale, Dan. You guys are gonna be the last thing between us and the
Enjoy the
exit.
fire.
Can we use a different word than finale?
I mean, I guess the crux of it in seeing the ARF here, I mean, the alternative 1 and 2, I mean, there's real power in that terminology as to whether these are in fact alternatives or whether they are steps. Because that's a very material difference, and if we're talking about alternatives, that's a dangerous word for developers. You know, my client, Zach's client, Mr. Ridenhour here, and anybody else who may actually be watching this, because it's not just the ones in the room you need to worry about, it's the ones who are paying attention to this conversation, who have seen that wastewater treatment plant slowly get closer and get closer. And as he said, I mean, when you anticipate that infrastructure upgrade is going to happen, that's when the developers pay attention. And to have this conversation now is a real threat to anybody who's looking at the town of Smithsburg who isn't in this room. We're here and can listen and can give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but those who are not here, who are watching, that's the real threat. And use of that term alternative versus step is very dangerous. With regard to the projected number of EDUs, I would caution that the number of EDUs that are going to be taken down by Cloverly Hill or Mr. Ridenhour or anybody else, quite frankly, is speculative at the moment. It's the nature of the process. At the beginning, it fluctuates greatly, but at the end of the day, there's got to be a significant margin there that the developer knows before I go put millions of dollars into infrastructure, I don't need to worry about somebody else in town coming in. We can't all be chasing the same number of EDUs and be trying to compete for that very same pot. There's got to be enough
Jason,
before that investment gets made, before anything takes place.
You had brought that up a second ago. It's my understanding that your client is looking to borrow the $4 million for infrastructure, and I don't know if you can speak to those actual numbers, but looking for the $4 million to do the horizontal infrastructure, sidewalks, roads, sewer, water, stuff like that. And as to your point, that if he gets midway through his development, and then all of a sudden Mr. Ridenhour comes along, or another developer comes along and takes the remaining, then how does that affect his or any other investor or bank financing or anything else to that effect?
Sure, and that may be another rhetorical question because It's hard to predict. It depends upon where you are in the phase, and it depends upon how many units have been sold. It depends upon what's on the drawing board. I mean, there's a lot of variable factors. I mean, but the bottom line is that no developer, nobody who's extending financing to that developer is going to proceed if there's any risk that you're gonna run short of any infrastructure, and there's a potential moratorium or consent order or anything else even remotely on the horizon or being discussed. You just can't proceed with that level of uncertainty. I go back to that term I started with, but I think really the crux, this has been great because it is clearly in the air, I hope, and I hope, you know, in the next couple of weeks we can be done with the conversation, but I think, you know, the real crux is, are these alternatives or are these steps in a sequence? That's the real heart of the question from being a gallery in the back row wearing the purple shirt. Mr. Ryder.
Yes, I had a national company get in touch with me, builders, last year, and they were looking at different places in Washington County, and they asked about sewer plant, and I said, when the county turned this over several years ago into high residential, that they said twice upstairs that that the county would rebuild the plant to take care of Holiday Acres and this, it was said twice. And this builder said to me, when they built the plant in 2018, they'll talk to you.
So,
And they said if you're gonna build it 2018, this is 2018.
We know.
That was based off the 2013-14 timeframe.
Don't try and hide. You gentlemen sitting back there have been.
Mr. Brown, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Eddie Brown, Cloverleaf Farm Lane. I'm not in town, I'm in the county. And I hear the county commissioners, we're gonna lose 1.5.
Actually, it'd be probably more than 15 by the time we get to that point.
Well, and that's what we're trying to clarify, Mr. Brown, as Mr. Kiefer said earlier, that, you know, why spend 1.5 and then flip it to another 15? But as Councilman Hetherington said, if we're gonna do this concurrently, you know, long-term, that's what we need clarification on for our potential developers and people that wanna invest in this community, or Mr. McKenna's wife.
Sorry about that.
So, but that goes to your point. Yeah, I mean, as I said a moment ago, we as county commission or town council have a financial responsibility to the people that elected us and the constituents we serve. And we are trying to get to a point that services our needs as well as make sure that you guys can look at your constituents in the face. And I think part of the frustration is the uncertainty. That, and I said the word in lieu because that was the interpretation that I got from the county commission meeting. And I would agree with Councilman Hetherington that for a long-term strategic plan, we would like the concurrence, I would think is what we want. And
I mean, I would prefer to just go with option 2.
well, I would too, but yes, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So in lieu of that, yes, you know, we're trying to let our constituents know that we are, you know, I don't wanna say pushing, but we are working for their behalf, as well as the county as a whole, as far as long-term future development. And with that, I will cede to Mr. DeVito and Mr. Bradshaw.
My goodness, yes, gentlemen.
You know, come up on the hot seat, we like it when you're up front.
You are right next to the door.
Yeah. Oh, you're purple.
I think I'd rather stand up so I can move faster if I have to.
Oh, we'll just have Jason block the door. He's not gonna let
I'd like to start off by, I can at least address a couple of things that I've heard tonight that I think are misinformation. And some things are just important topics that have been brought up and need to be restated over and over again. First of all, I really appreciate the fact that, to point out that this is not about Cloverleaf. This is about the overall development of Smithsburg area, and it always has been in our mind, and it always will be. When we look at these projects, and when we look at individual ways that we can serve the community, we take the whole picture into consideration. That means your comprehensive plan was taken into consideration. What EDUs do we have available now because of the efficient operation of the current plant in its current configuration? And then how do we meet the needs that you've identified? Not us, you've identified. And going through this, and I think it's important to point out, well, before I go into that, I think I have to say, biomag is a proven technology. It's been stated over and over again, if it works, if it works, if it works, it works. We did not configure the Smithsburg plant to take advantage of that portion of the biomag, because when we upgraded the biomag in Smithsburg, we upgraded for a specific reason, and that was to meet the ammonia limits that were put on by the state. But when we did that, the biomag equipment that was installed in there was installed to a capacity of 0.6. So the equipment that's there is capable of handling 0.6, okay? What we've told our consultants is that we've given them a mandate, and I'm sorry, Rob, but when you're dealing with engineers, and Rob.
I am sitting
Rob-
behind you.
I'm an engineer.
He does have a pen in his hand.
I'm surrounded. But when you're dealing with these type of people, it's very hard to get them to come with any kind of specificity. So when we try to nail them down, they just don't want it to be nailed down. That's why you're getting this 4 to 450. We've told them, we want you to target 450. Come back to us with a plan to do 450. They're gonna say, hey, we're gonna do the best we can, because that's their nature. But everything we've seen up to this point indicates that they feel very confident that that's gonna be a reality. So I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that it's absolutely positive, but we've had meetings with them, we've talked to them specifically about it, we've told them exactly what we want to do, we told them we were gonna hold their feet to the fire. Now, whether this is an interim, or is it a step, or is it an alternative, everything that we do will be done with the idea of everything that gets put in there in terms of bringing it to 450 will be designed to a 0.6. So we're not gonna have any redundancy, we're not gonna have to redo anything. If we decide in the future, if the growth pattern of Smithsburg says we gotta go to 0.6, we'll have that ability, we'll be 2 steps ahead to get to that final.
From a capacity side, but not from a finance side, because they would still, the Board of County Commissioners would have to approve any.
They always have that, yes.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So there, even though we're talking guarantees
Still
and
in-
biomag, there is still no.
And it's still in the
Okay.
CIP budget.
Right, but, okay.
Okay. So, and I think it's important to point out that in our agenda report form here, it says to meet the growth in the Smithsburg wastewater treatment facility will be upgraded. It doesn't say will be upgraded, our goal is not 0.6, our goal is not 0.4. Our goal is to meet the capacities as stated in Smithsburg. Whatever that is. It's not about Cloverly. It's about what is the capacity needs for the town of Smithsburg, and how can we the most efficient way meet those needs. And we believe that we can meet those needs. We can go to 450,000 gallons and provide those additional EDUs, which will meet everything that has been identified in your comprehensive plan, Cloverly, and an additional amount for future growth.
With the biomass.
Yes, sir.
So instead of if, we're using we believe, which is if, right?
I'm not gonna be able to tell you 100% for sure until those engineers that I talked about.
Well, I know putting the
put this-
tank in the ground will guarantee that we have 660,000, but, you know, we believe, and that's fine. I mean, you're presenting what you believe will work. I just wanna make sure that I hear that correctly.
We currently have SBR tanks, which are manufactured by Aqua Aerobics. Aqua Aerobics have run the numbers and determined that from a biological practice that the SBRs can be upgraded to 450 using the biomac technology. You still have to look at some of the ancillary systems such as pump stations, UV, and so forth to make sure it's capable of doing that, and it may also have to be upgraded as part of this plan. But those answers we don't have just yet. But the biomag, they're saying, will work. and that's Aqua Aerobics, who's one of the leader in wastewater design treatment plants.
Is the 1.5 or 1 million part of those upgrades for the pump stations, the UV and such, or is that not estimated in that at this point?
It's in the ballpark.
So if you had to go through and upgrade all of those ancillary systems, would that 1 million cover that, or will we get the funding?
We may go to a little higher until we know the exact numbers. We're not sure. It may go to like 1.25, but we're not exactly sure what those numbers are because we haven't did a detailed study to determine how much expansion they're going to need yet. But we have got a proposal from our engineers to do all this work. It did come in late Friday afternoon, so we do have the engineering proposals, and we are going through them now to review them.
Timeline on that?
We'll take a look at them here. There's a couple things we want to discuss with them in a little more detail before we execute a change order, which we will have to go back to the commissioners and get authorization to award a contract to them.
I think what Rob said earlier about this being our top priority is without a doubt an understatement. This is the top priority of our department, is to make sure that we get this taken care of. We told them, we were hoping that they would be here tonight because they had originally indicated that they would be, but for some reason they're from out of town, so. But hopefully, and one of the reasons since our last meeting that we had, when we came in here and we talked to, Debbie and Councilman Souders and the mayor here, we were hoping to have more information. That's why we hadn't gotten back to you. And why haven't we shared all this with you? It seems like it changes day to day. I mean, we get more information on a regular basis. That, as Rob said, this whole biomag option came by because of our analysis, our engineering results, and our, looking at all of the different options on how to do this. We could have just easily said, well, hey, RK&K give us a proposal and we'll get, and we'll just go with that, but we didn't do that. I mean, we went through this, we spend hours every single day discussing this, analyzing it, and are we doing the best we can? And I'm here to tell you that we do that with a lot of projects. It's not just Smithsburg. I would love to tell you that you guys are that important, but we do that with just about every. Well, right now, you're very important. And we've got a purple, absolutely. So, we do that with every project. We're value engineering every single project that we have on the table. But a lot of these things have come up. A lot of it, it's all about, hey, wait a minute, what about, what are those kind of things? And then we pursue it. We make a few phone calls, we get some information back, we analyze that information, and then we move forward with it. We feel comfortable enough to talk about this now as a viable solution to the immediate problem.
Dan, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Who were we hoping that would be here tonight, the company that manufactures this?
RK&K, our engineering.
Could we reach out to them and see if they could be here in 2 weeks or the next time we meet?
They will be.
If we have to buy them a hotel room, we buy them a hotel room.
Well, what we're hoping for is that they'll have enough information that, and they'll have even more information than they have now, because they are working on this, hopefully as we speak.
My question to you is, and it goes back to what Councilwoman Weaver had mentioned. As far as the timeline of when this changed, we had a developer that went through this process, what'd you say, over a decade? And we're going down this track and everything's going fine, and then all of a sudden, and I know maybe it's a priority change, Rob, maybe it was we didn't want to spend the 15 million and we want to go an alternative direction. But my understanding was that the funding for both, the North End transfer and all that you guys were talking about that day, as well as the Smithsburg plant, is in the CIP and can be ready to go now, correct?
I don't know about ready to go now.
Well, I mean, as far as moving
Yes.
forward with the timeline of design and construction.
Yeah, in our CIP, which is a 10-year plan, typically the upfront, the first fiscal year, is typically design money. So the discussion that day that you heard was we had design money in.
Okay.
And I do want to clarify on the north end, the comparisons, those were simply because when Mr. Cross came in with Fred Fredericks of FSA, and I think you were there as well, Jason. The discussion was, you're at 83% here in Smithsburg, and how could you possibly consider I wanted to bring levity to that 83% to say, We are, in other places, we are well over 100%. So that is not to compare or contrast the North End or priority. It's simply to say, we have some fires to put out, and we're putting them out. Now, one thing I really think is important and gels, I think, well with what Mark and Dan have said, is that this is a constant evaluation, which I've shared with them. It's not like, it's like any of the towns or the North End or anywhere. You get it built, in Conicajig, the same thing. You get it built, and it's not like you sit back and say, well, that's built, and I'm gonna fade off into the sunset. It's constantly reevaluating what happens. That's why we have the comp plan. That's why we have the planning analysis. That's why we have the numbers. That's why we talk specifically at our senior staff meetings tomorrow morning. We have planning and zoning people who are the first ones to see plans that come in from Jason's clients. We're very proud of the connectivity we have among staff to be evaluating your needs. And it's a daily effort with communication involved. So whatever happens here, it will be, if we do our job right, it will be a gradual interim of flowing into one to the next. And there will be planning that goes on years in advance.
So I appreciate that we're, town of Smithsburg is so important and all that right now, and I suspect that'll continue till November, and after that, I guess we'll have to see. But when are we gonna know if this is gonna work?
I'm hoping that we'll have something back from them in a couple of weeks, I would hope.
But once we start the process, is that your question?
Yeah, how are we gonna know that we're gonna get the number that you guys believe and hope and wish, and if we get to? When are we gonna know if we get there?
When we get the report from our engineering firm, in those, we have some of the numbers already. We'll be able to look at the numbers and we'll be able to project the performance of the plant.
But when are we gonna know if it's successful or not?
I think on the 18th, they're bringing information back. And for me, I'm gonna be looking for the total numbers that they're going, I wanna see that new EDU gap closed.
No, but what I'm saying is, if we're gonna do alternative one, when is it gonna start, when are we gonna see
And that's
results, and
what
when are we gonna know what number we're at? Not a projection, not based on an engineer's estimate, when are we gonna see a real number based on performance of the plant?
Yeah, Mark and Dan, I mean, maybe I can help. Well, I probably can't, but is it?
But you're gonna try.
I'm gonna try.
He's gonna try.
You got a purple shirt. Is it correct that we believe in the if solidifies and becomes a real bankable, investable, project when the discharge permit itself is modified? When that discharge permit is modified and approved by MDE, that's when it becomes a certainty, correct? So when the 330 becomes 450, or becomes 600, whatever the number is, that's the moment in time, correct, when it becomes certain?
Right.
Is that accurate?
Yeah,
Okay.
Certainly you start.
So if that's the moment in time, help us understand the steps in that sequence and the timeframes of that process, because
part of the engineering that our GMK does is that they actually have meetings with MDE. So while they're engineering and they're doing the design work, they come up with the preliminary design work and they say, yes, this is gonna work. Okay, all the numbers are gonna work. Then we have to, obviously MDE is required, we have to do a construction permit to MDE. And part of that, what we've told our Buchart Horn is that we want them to go to MDE, and we're gonna be part of those negotiations with MDE is that we want what's called a moderate, a minor modification to the permit. Not open the permit, a minor modification to the permit, which will help us get through the process, through the MDE process faster.
The concern of opening the permit is that it may be open and closed and not be able to be modified after that, correct?
Well, if you open it, then you open it up to all kinds of things.
Well, that's what I'm saying, so
Yeah.
state guidelines, everything could have changed in that interim period, right?
More time consuming as well.
Right, and then we're back to the what ifs, coulds, and shoulds, yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, when we're in that stage, we're talking real numbers. I mean, we're not talking about theoretical numbers, we're talking real numbers when we're at that stage. So, I mean, I'm trying to answer your question the best I can.
6 months, a year, what are we talking about? That's what I'm trying to understand, and I'm not getting the answer.
12 weeks.
From today, 12 weeks from today, we'll know
By
the
the time
number.
we authorize the engineers to proceed, they'll have the preliminary design report completed within 12 weeks. That will outline exactly what systems will need to be upgraded and so forth, and they'll have the cost estimates prepared at that time too.
So, Jason, you probably can't answer this question, and because your client is the closest one or the most ready to move forward, is the 12-week window and what Councilman Hetherington has been discussing, is that something that your client would need to necessitate his funding source, or is that not?
Well, I mean.
Because my question is, if it's been used before, and if that information has been used for said development or developers to go to their funding source to actually get their funding for what they need.
I think, let me answer that twofold. I mean, the 12-week, I think, is the design component, correct?
Right.
That's not the MDE approval component of whether it's gonna be a
That's
minor and where
different.
to approve it. So, yeah, I mean, I think the 12 weeks certainly is an acceptable window because of there's still lots of design components that we're doing on our entitlement side, so that can run concurrent. But there's no way that that development is going to go of record with permits, grading works until the MDE approval of the modification to the permit is signed, sealed, and delivered, period. And whether that's 450 or 600, again, selfishly on behalf of the developer, 450 is sufficient, but there's much bigger issues than this development, right, admittedly, so it's up to you guys as to whether 450 is sufficient or whether you push it to 6, but one of those two has to be done and in the bag, so to speak, before anything can commence out there, period.
So can I ask, what was the driver? You said about 4 months ago, you started talking about the biomed. And just complete honesty, was it to say, based on what we're hearing, this will sufficiently meet their need? Or because we as the county cannot, we can't do 15 million? What is the driver? Because you're going from a 1 million to a 15 million. So 4 months ago, Mr. Slocum said about 4 months ago.
That's
So
what the
when,
biomed-
was that because it was the initial planning to achieve on the CIP, to start talking about these upgrades, and as, okay, we're gonna move forward with these upgrades, and then that talking said, oh wait, we can do the biomed? Or was it, we cannot do 15 million? I'm just trying to figure out kind of how we got to this biomag. Was it in the planning for the total complete upgrade as it is on the CIP? Or,
A few months prior to the 4 months,
okay,
we had already decided to go through every single project in the department to, again, value engineer.
okay.
Can we do it better? Can we do it more efficiently? Is there a better way of delivering that service? That's how it started.
And that's roughly at the same time the rate models are being looked at, the CFO's reporting down. The rate model says this. We're getting feedback from public meetings about a similar time, a little later. We're understanding that we need to do, if we're gonna look like we're looking you in the eye now with the constituents and saying, we don't want your rates to go up. What are we doing? We looked at value engineering. And to be quite frank about it as well, 12.5 is what this is in the CIP for. The numbers, as you've said, keep going up. So can we do something, and can we do this instead of something that looks more chaotic to the financial budget that is 15 million? And it's worth having this discussion for $14 million.
From all of that, is it reasonable for us to assume that the biomag is to keep costs down, but to also try and achieve some sort of upgrade? Is that in a,
Yes.
So it goes
all
back
of
to-
this 2-hour discussion?
Goes back to the same point of, we are doing alternative, your recommendation would be to do alternative 1 in lieu of alternative 2, correct? So it won't be concurrent, it'll be, we're gonna go biomag or nothing.
We're talking, okay, when we, let me answer that, please. When we talk about, okay, we're gonna do this and then stop on everything else, that's, for the immediate future, we would plan, provided we come back in 2 weeks and we have the information we feel we will have. We will continue with this process, which will we're likely to get 450 out, and that will serve for a couple dozen years at least. And if that's the case, we would not plan to enter in the CIP immediately a plant that already is going to be served for 24 years. Now, if you double in growth, and these are the other aspects to think of as far as the growth. If you double in growth, there's other infrastructure needs as well. There's traffic, there's water line, there's other things to be considered too. Maybe those are all up to speed. But doubling is a huge number, and that's the alternative too. Not to say you should slow down or stop on that, but what we'd like to do is provide something that we think can serve you quicker at a lesser cost. Yes, absolutely. Saving 14 million has been on the pro side to this option. There's no question about it.
So it's more of it would be viewed as more of a Band-Aid.
I don't look at a 20-year, at minimum, a 20-year fix as a Band-Aid. That's perspective. We just heard Conica Jake, 19 years, and it's back to $32 million. So.
And I'll go back to, this is part of our frustration, okay? We spent an extraordinary amount of money and time on improving our I&I situation. We just very recently entered into a huge loan to replace our water transmission lines from where we have water up on the mountain to get down to town, and address some water pressure issues as well, under the idea that this project was going to happen. And now, at this stage of the game, we're being told, well, it's not really gonna happen, we're gonna do this first, and if it works, it might work, you'll probably be good for a couple dozen years. Well, that's all speculation. Getting this project done is finite. We know it'll work, we know it will get us that capacity, which will last us, all right, you wanna say 96 years? I think that's a ridiculous estimation to make, based on, 96 years ago, would we have predicted what this country looks like today? Not even close. So I think going that far out might look good on paper, but it's completely unrealistic and it doesn't make any sense at all.
And that's exactly my point.
So we're gonna start option 2 then.
Which gets you anywhere from 24 to additional years, yes. That's what we're looking at. If we find that technically something comes back in the next 2 weeks that we don't have further confidence to bring to you and to the commissioners, it's a stop, it's not gonna go. What we've heard so far, I think we're being extremely conservative in what we're presenting to you. If anything, we're erring on the conservative side, and that's what I've asked the staff to do, rather than present any false hope whatsoever. So I think what I'm hearing from our commissioners is they want to satisfy you. They are the bosses, they're gonna see that you're satisfied. We're gonna bring forward a plan that satisfies you, satisfies them, and does it with confidence. And saves as much money as we can. Does it risk? No. We don't wanna put anything at risk, your growth at risk. When we look at infrastructure, typically 24, 50, 75 years is a range that we have to consider. Again, our CIP is a 10-year CIP. So that's up to twice as long as our CIP is.
For Commissioner Baker and Commissioner Kiefer, you said in representation of the citizens, you were not for the growth based on citizen feedback. Would you feel comfortable supporting alternative 1?
I've already told you in my earlier comments, the vote has already been taken. It's my job now to support the infrastructure needed to keep your community moving forward.
So if we are 18 months from now, I mean, I don't know how long the
Well, what
construction
I'm
will
going,
take.
I was talking earlier, when they come back on the 18th, for me, I'm going to be looking for more solid numbers in your new EDUs. I'm going to be looking for more solid numbers in your total EDUs, because you currently, I think they said you have 161. And I'm also going to be looking for a timeline. So that's going to be provided hopefully on the 18th, is it the 18th? The 18th, and then that's going to answer many, many questions. So for you, I think it's pretty obvious, you want to know when you're going to get started and when you're going to have some completion.
And when it's completed, let's just assume for a second that it doesn't do what is being predicted, for whatever reason. That it
Doesn't do what it's being, I'm not sure.
This biomag system doesn't produce as everybody thinks it's going to. Are you telling me that that CIP money will still be there to continue with alternative two?
That
right then and there?
CIP money continues for how long?
It's a 10-year plan, and it's in there now for approximately the next 4 years. So yes, yes.
Right, but that's predicated on funding currently, because you even said it was 12.5 before, it's
That's
now at
right.
15.
Yes.
4 years from now, it'll be 20.5 million.
And our CIP
And we'll be having the
changes.
same conversation about whether you want to fully fund it or not.
Well, no, we're moving forward as soon as they provide the concrete numbers. I can only speak for myself.
Correct, I appreciate that.
And remember that everything that we do, I mean, that's why I hesitate when you say it's a Band-Aid. I would hesitate to characterize it that way, because everything that we do, all the components that we have to upgrade for the 450,000 upgrade are components that have to be upgraded for the .6. So it's not like we're doing things that are a waste of time or a waste of money or delays whatever needs to be done in the future.
So it's possible alternative two would be cheaper then?
It could be. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
assuming that everything's gonna go up, so
Right, there
hopefully
is,
it'll
right.
be a wash. I mean, that would be my ultimate hope. But, and trust me, Councilman, I promise you that when we have these meetings with RK&K, and they have their normal tendency of being ambiguous and start to, you know, I'm gonna tell them, oh, no, that's not gonna work. Because unless you're gonna sit next to me and look them in the eye and tell them the same thing, here's the questions that they have, and here's the answers that they expect.
So, I mean, I hope everyone understands, as we move forward, we've all indicated that this town needs growth. You know, citizens in our town would also like to see growth of not just residential. I think we're focusing more on the business aspect. And, I'll be looking forward to hearing that report. You have to wear purple again. It's gonna be a requirement.
And as we, I guess.
I told Mr. Holmes earlier, that's all I had.
Head down the path of wrapping up, because it's been a long night for a lot of people.
I do have one more
Okay, go ahead,
question
Gary.
for staff. I don't know if they'll have the answer. But cost per new EDU, you have a range from 3,100 to 1,800, and then you have on step 2 there, you have 10,000. What's the average cost of an EDU throughout the county?
$7,000.
Not
we
just
charge
purchase, but the-
We charge $6,900, I think, Rob,
Yeah,
someone
but
said it was like a
I-
$3,100
But
difference.
this is the cost.
Right.
Okay, I didn't know if there was an average cost for an EDU.
No, I mean, we could look back at past projects and come up with another for you.
But that also goes back to with our potential growth, and some of which we have on the horizon, there is going to be payback to the county. It's not like we're asking you to do this upgrade and it just be a blank field for the next 25 years. Our intention is, as I indicated earlier, with, you know, tax rates and with the developments that come in, you know, a good portion of this project, as it continues, will be paid back to the county. So like I said, we're not asking you to build it and spend everyone's money in the county or your tax or your rate customers in the county with it not being used. You know, our intention is to get economic development so that we can pay back. I think of the 6,900, I mean, I think what was it, about 9,000 total? You know, I think in the preliminary numbers when we had Jill and Greg in, you know, a couple months ago, it was like $12 million return on investment of this project when it's fully funded or fully developed out, with about $9 million going back to WashCo County in connection fees.
This project you're talking about.
Just Cloverly.
Just Cloverly, not the others.
So that's why I said, if you know, and Mr. Kiefer, I just wanted, you know, real quickly. Yes, we negotiated some pre-annexation things with the developer of Cloverly. And that's why I said in my statement about when the referendum petition went around, there were a lot of misleading and false information that was spread. You know, the developer and the town at that time worked out that until the shovels hit the ground, yes, you know, there was no taxes collected, because as clearly as a business person would indicate, it's a vacant field, it's not causing you any harm, but the moment I start to dig, I will pay my town property taxes. We negotiated that in fair faith.
Yeah, there's a window on that.
There's a window. It's either, you know, up to 10 years. So if he doesn't do anything for 10 years, that's fine, but on the 10-year and first day, he's gonna start paying property taxes. You know, we negotiated, you wanna talk about residents and their concerns, we negotiated with the developer that if the development begins and there's infrastructure issues that are directly related to that development that impact our current residents, the developer was on the hook to repair and make those modifications. And I forget what the third one was, Jason, do you remember off the top? I mean, no, it was to follow through with all the AFPOs or APFOs and everything else that's set up by state guideline. But, you know, we want you to know, we did our due diligence on it. It's been a 10-year process. So again, as we, you know, hopefully wrap up, I appreciate you gentlemen coming, staff, everyone. I know it's a long day for you guys as well. And, you know, I'm certain the mayor and Debbie will say the same thing, as long as the council, you know, we're looking to see what you have on the 18th as far as numbers. You know, but we want the county to understand that we as an elected body, not of just this town, but of constituents of the area, want the staff to look at the long-term ramifications and how this not only affects our community, but the entire growth and development of the county going forward. Like somebody said, long before or long after our tenures are done. But with that, I'm done. My phone number, or you can reach me through Debbie. Anytime you want to sit down and have a conversation, I would love to educate you gentlemen that are running, everyone, on our issues over here and give you the information associated with what's here. I'm sorry.
You should keep referring to me as the council.
Council lady, council person, council queen.
That's on tape.
All right, so.
I have nothing else to add, but to say thank you all for the cooperation and conversations for the past 2 months. Thank you.
I do want to say thank you to Mr. Slocum, to you, your staff. You and I have to sit across from each other now the United Way, and so, you know, to each of you, I'm assuming the purple was accidental, or was it?
Oh, absolutely not.
But I do want to thank the commissioners.
If we can hold on 1 second.
For being here, thank you.
Bonnie, did you?
Yes, to the gentleman here, I just have a question for you. Can you point to a completed project that you envisioning doing for Smithsburg?
That's, I would have to defer to your engineering discussion that you had with Arcane Air.
I'm sorry?
That is complete, something you've done in the recent past that is completed, a project similar to what you envision doing.
You mean with the biomag system?
That, or even the phase 2.
Well, we've got significant history now and experience with biomag, because again, biomag was a pioneer, it was a new technology years ago, and to actually Julie and Greg's commitment to that, we were probably instrumental in the pioneering of the technology, which is now used all over. I mean, there's 5 biomag plants in West Virginia alone.
But is there a plant in Washington County that you have done? And how long
Weinberg
has-
County,
and how long has that been completed in
4 or
operation?
5 years. County-Jig is coming online right now. Smithsburg was done, and the biobank process in Smithsburg was done, like 2013, 2014.
Right, but that was to reduce the ammonia, and we got
Right,
some
but I mean,
residual
but-
capacity.
but-
But I think her question is, were you in these other plants, and correct me if I'm wrong, in these other plants, able to add EDU and capacity to meet any kind of potential growth in those plants that you've done? Or was it solely for the purpose of trying to reduce nitric ammonia and all that?
Weinbrenner was done.
Okay.
And basically, the capacity of Weinbrenner, it was built into the capacity of Weinbrenner. It wasn't done specifically.
Like us, separately, okay.
But it was done, it was built into the potential capacity of Weinbrenner in Conococheague. And actually, because of the conversations that we've had, because of Smithsburg, we're gonna go back and sharpen the pencils on Conococheague also to see if we maximize the operation of the biomake process there. It's just now coming online. The project is just now being complete. So before we start playing with it, we gotta make sure that everything's running right. So, but as soon as we get comfortable that everything is running the way it's supposed to be running, we're gonna be pushing the limits on that also. The same way that we're talking about looking at this project. Because we're gonna see if maybe we can take it from 4.5 to 5 or 6, just by maximizing the biomass. We're not sure yet. But that's gonna be one of our challenges in the next couple of years.
And one of the things that becomes evident as we talk about this discussion and alternative 1 versus 2 and some hybrid blend of those is, it's like Jason, Randy knows this, and developers will build something, and then from that, they'll have money for that revenue to build more. That's largely what we're talking about here is you can build something that'll allow you to grow, and with that revenue, that tax revenue, both in the town and out of the town, in the county, we can then continue to contribute in a progression to reinvest that tax dollar into future growth if that's where the town is headed. So this is an investment. It is not a Band-Aid, and I believe that. I'd like to share with you so you believe that. This is not a Band-Aid that's a temporary fix. We're not into spending money to throw it away.
But you understand the concern on our pursuit of the elusive government dollar.
I do.
That we see it here now, and 4 or 5 years from now, may not be there.
I do, and I think that if what you say comes to fruition, if what we say comes to fruition, and that you have the capacity, and you use that capacity, it's going to become obvious that you need more capacity through the growth, just like it is tonight, through that. Success will get more success is, I think, than your mantra. And that's exactly what we're saying too. Allow us to succeed with this, if it proves itself in the next few weeks with additional study, and then let that grow into a reinvestment into the plant, as Dan's talking about. We will continue to grow the plant as needed to keep up with the growth of the town.
Can I just clarify the Band-Aid comment, just so that we can, this, for me, was to gain information, because I don't claim to be the expert. And so that was a clarification question for me and how I am processing what we're doing, okay? And you've said it's not a Band-Aid, so we ripped it off and thrown it in the trash, so we don't need to. So I just wanna make sure that everyone understands that this was for me to gain useful information in order to serve this town better and the citizens that we have here. That's
right.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you guys on the 18th and hopefully have some information. Looking forward to seeing you guys as well, and thank you very much all for coming out tonight. I say we adjourn.